Hey, thanks for joining me. Today I just want to share my testimony, and it's a little bit of a difficult testimony to share actually, because it's very different to some of the stories that typically I've heard other people share, and even some parts of it can be really hard to understand. But I think it's really important for me to start to share this story, so that if there can be some things for people to learn, especially for the times we walk in, I really hope that there can be some blessings and benefits from me starting to reach out and share this story more. So basically, I'm sure that there's a few things that can be learned. There's some really supernatural things. I've actually seen Jesus, and I've seen demons, and seen all sorts of things. But if you bear with me, there's a lot more than just those things. And so I hope that that there's something that you can take away from my story. So my story started when I was a young person, and my mum came to the Lord, and I had quite a grapple inside of me, as I was trying to work out, where do I fit with this new faith journey that my mum's on. And I felt quite a strong conviction as a young person. There was all sorts of things that was happening for me, and so the thought of taking God seriously and chasing after him, there was times I felt and experienced his peace, and there was times when the thought of having a loving, caring father was really beautiful. But so much more so because I didn't have a dad in my life for most of my younger years, for different reasons. I had a really deep part in me that really found it hard to understand that God could love me. And so I had lots of chatter coming at me all the time, and quite a spiritual war over my life. There were times when I just really would be thinking, why trust God? There's so much more. I can just go out there and live, and I can go out and find my own way in the world. Why would I want to trust God? And how can I trust God is probably deep down the actual question that I was asking. And so I remember reading the Bible at times, and I remember seeing stories like with Thomas, where Jesus showed himself to Thomas. And I remember thinking, you know what, God, I'm going to have to really have you show me a sign. And so, as I got a little bit older, I had some different things happen, and I had a prophet came into our church when I was just almost a teenager, and he said, look, I can see that the enemy is really trying to take you off on a path where to do your own thing and away from God, and you've almost made that decision in your heart. And deep down I knew that was true. I knew that I definitely was doing my own thing. I sort of was hiding lots of different things from my mum, and I wasn't fully rebellious, but the seed was planted there where I really absolutely knew that that was true. And so not long after that, I remember saying to my mum, because that prophet also said, well, God's going to use you, he's going to bring you through. And he didn't say it like that, but he said, God's going to bring you through, and he's going to use the dark things so that there can be light. But he certainly was able to see that there was a battle for my soul. And I remember being so excited about the good things he said, but my mum was really deeply distressed, and she was like, no, I'm not accepting that. That's not okay for you. And so she obviously was a really strong praying mother, and she prayed so hard for years and years and years. Not long after I had that prophetic word from the prophet that came to our church, I had actually heard into the heavens, and I remember standing on the side of the road, and I remember was a bit angry with my mum that day, and I remember hearing some stuff happen up in the heavens, and I really didn't quite have a grid to understand what was happening. But what I know now from reading the book of Job and reading the Bible, when I became a proper Christian, I come to realize that what was actually happening was that Satan was before the throne asking to sift me. And that's just like the book of Job. We see that that the enemy at times absolutely does ask, can he test us and can he come against us, because he wants to discredit us and he wants to accuse us. And we see that, Jesus said to Peter that the enemy had asked to sift him, and, Jesus said, I'm going to pray you through, that you're going to have faith to come through this and that you're going to stand. So that's just a little preempting of what went on for me. But I didn't really know where to put any of those things. And so those things came, they were significant, but I really didn't understand what was going on. It wasn't until a couple of years later, and my mum, who loved the Lord very, very much, she was his lifeline. He was her lifeline, and she loved me, but she loved the Lord. and so I remember just her praying and praying and praying all the time, and what I found out later was she must have been really praying and interceding for me and for my siblings and for my family. And so she came to me. She was actually dying, and I'm glad that she's gone on to be with the Lord now. It's been a place of peace for her. She had quite a hard life at times, and so I'm glad that I know that she's in peace, and I knew that straight away when she got taken to be with the Lord. But just before she died, she said to me how the Lord had revealed to her. There was one particular day, and we were walking down the road, and it was quite a long walk, and I remember everything word for word as she said it, but for time's sake I won't recap it all here. But she was praying very earnestly as she shared with me that the Lord had showed her that the enemy had a plan again, to take me out, and that she was really praying, Lord, no, I don't want to accept this. I'm coming against this, and I'm fighting in faith, and I'm standing against this thing, that it won't come near my daughter. But she realized that the Lord had kept pressing on to her, that it wasn't just given to her the understanding of what was happening to stop it, but more so to understand, to equip me, to bring me through the trial. Just like when Jesus was praying, Jesus didn't pray to stop what happened with Peter when the enemy asked to sift him and to bring an assignment against him. Instead, he prayed him through. And so that's what the Lord showed my mum to do. And so she shared quite seriously and earnestly that the Lord had showed her that that there was an assignment where the enemy was going to bring someone into my life in a new season, someone into my life who the enemy would be trying to use to bring an attack against me. She said that person also had a spirit of suicide plaguing them, and the enemy's plan was to try and take that person out with the suicide spirit, but in the meantime also use that person to ask me if I believed in Jesus, and to get me to deny Christ 3 times. And so she explained how this person would come into my life and would begin asking me over a series of events and series of times what my thoughts were about Jesus. And my mum really strongly urged me that at any point I could partner with the Lord, and that I could have the boldness and the courage to speak the truth in love to my friend. And my mum really strongly exhorted me that if I really loved someone and really cared for them, that I would share the truth with them, that I would stand in truth, because we know that the word says, that a light doesn't get hidden under a bushel, it doesn't get hidden under a bed. Instead, it's put up on a lampstand, it's put up high so that everyone can see it. And my mum explained how there's so many people lost and in bondage and in darkness, and they need to see the light. And so we need to be really prepared to speak the truth. However, the enemy would want to buffet us and get us to shrink back and to feel fear so that we wouldn't actually speak the truth. So my mum explained that the enemy, that the Lord had showed her that the enemy had this plan to get me to deny Jesus 3 times, and also for my friend to suicide. And so she just explained that she was really struggling so much with this information, but that she was standing in faith that I would know how to stand, that I would know how to come through it. But she also knew that the Lord had showed her that there may be a time of darkness that I would come into, where I really needed to understand what had happened, and so that the plans of the enemy to try and take me out, that the Lord would be able to use, what he was giving her to speak to me, to bring me through. My mum ended up passing away, and I entered into a really massive time of rebellion, and a time where I had such a hard heart and anger, and probably blamed God. I really turned so rebellious. I was so rebellious. I was smoking who knows what with Bible papers on one night. Like, I seriously look back and I know that I was being tormented by the enemy, and I was around situations where absolutely I knew that I had friends around me who also were being tormented. I had a friend come into my life who absolutely did start to talk about suicide all the time, and it was not long after my mum had given me the word and she'd moved on to go to heaven that this person came into my life, and I became quite, I don't know about addicted, but really infatuated with that friendship and with that relationship. And so I completely abandoned. I did have a little bit of faith, but I did completely let it go, and really stepped into drugs and alcohol and all sorts of different things, tarot cards, and opened lots of spiritual doors up to things that really allowed more and more of the spirit world into my life. The first time, it wasn't long into the friendship, and the first time I was getting to know this person, and the signs that they were suicidal, I thought, but back then, I guess a lot of people seem to have some sort of talk about suicide, so I didn't see that as anything huge, as an indicator. But then the first time that they asked me, what do you think about this Jesus? Because they knew that my mum was a Christian and that I'd gone to church at times and things like that. And I said, look, because I had a bit of fear of men, I wanted to be a bit of a people pleaser. And this person definitely didn't seem really into God. And so I just sort of said what fit them at that time. And I just sort of said, look, I know that my mum, but it's not really for me, is what I said. And then a couple of years moved on, and I sort of took note of it. I thought, okay, that is one time. There's a couple of things lining up, but surely what mum has said is crazy. Surely it's not true. And so I just dismissed it and kept moving on with life, but more and more I'd let stuff in. I was really going down a path in my heart where I was just doing my own thing. And then again it come to another point, and eventually this person asked me again, and we must have been having a drink or something, and they said, so really, tell me, what do you reckon about this Jesus? And at that point, because my heart was so hardened, I just, not so much just to please them, but also because of where I was at, I said, I don't really care. I don't want to know about Jesus, is what I said. Sorry, Lord. And so as soon as I said it, I realized, hang on, this is a bizarre thing. This is not a question that gets asked every day, and now it's twice. And it's twice that I've said no. And so I thought, take serious note, Bridie. You can't do this again. And especially not just because of the fear of knowing that you're actually denying Jesus 3 times, but also knowing that, that there's actually potentially could be something spiritual in the balance, where my friend actually may be suicidal. And I took that warning seriously, and I thought, don't let that happen again. And so another year or two passed, and then my friend was having a complete meltdown and not coping in life, and having a complete spark attack, and basically said, broke down and just said, well, what do you reckon? There's no point in living, there's no point at all. And I said, well, yeah, there is. Maybe we can get some help. Maybe we can go to church. Maybe we can do something. And then they spun around to me and they said, well, what do you think? What do you think about this Jesus then? And I said, well, maybe God is the answer. If you think that you're going to kill yourself, or you think you're going to die, maybe God is the answer. And then they said, I don't want to know about it anyway, and or something like that. And so at that time I thought, okay, well, that was 3 times I didn't deny Jesus. Phew. But also because I was so caught up in that relationship, and it was like that person was like an idol in my heart, where I only really was trying to find the truth because of them, rather than finding God himself. It didn't last. And so I was very addicted to them, and all my self-worth was caught up in them for some strange reason. And so I was quite infatuated to some, just had an unhealthy perspective of that person. And eventually then we moved on, and I realised that is not going to work, that relationship, so I gave up on that. And but my heart became really, really hard, and I really just went into some really, really dark points in my life where I got into some very unhealthy situations, and basically was self-sabotaging. It was like I wanted to not be alive anyway, and so got caught up in some very terrible stuff, and in witchcraft and all sorts of things as well, serious drugs and whatnot. And it was very muchly because I just didn't really care about life, and my heart through this whole process had become harder and harder and harder. And so at some point I ended up back in my friend's lounge room, but not in any relationship, just as a friendship. And they were sitting across from me again, and we'd just opened a can of beer or a stubby of beer or something, and we're about to just have some drinks. And I remember just feeling so hard and such, just a hard nut. And I remember them sitting across from the couch to me and just saying, so what do you really reckon then? What do you really reckon about this Jesus? And my heart was so hard towards them and towards God and everyone. And I just really said, I don't give a F about effing, I don't want to say his name connected to those words. And I just said, as I was saying the terrible stuff I was saying, I could see Jesus appear right in front of me, right in the doorway, not right in front of me, but in the small doorway just off to the left of where I was. And he was beautiful. He was so beautiful. Jesus was so beautiful. He was just golden, and he had his robes on, and his beautiful sandals, and beautiful hair, and flaming eyes of fire. Like the flaming eyes of fire just looking at me. That was so incredible. And I didn't even know what the book of Revelations was. I didn't even know that Jesus actually had flames of fire in the Bible. And he was just looking right through me with just these piercing eyes. And he was so sad. He was so grieved by what I did. And so I really grieved the Holy Spirit. And so he lifted up his arms, and he just, he turned his head and lifted up his arms, and up he ascended. And instantly I just had this shock, and just this deep fear of the Lord hit me just so deeply. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, wow, like the fear of the Lord just hit me. But it didn't last for long, because suddenly I just thought, well, what am I going to do? So straight away, my heart was soft for a moment, but then it just hardened even harder. And I remember just thinking, well, and was really terrible. My whole life I'd thought, yeah, God, if you give me a sign, I'll turn to you and I'll live for you. And there was my sign. I got the sign I wanted, but it wasn't enough, because my heart, and it reminds me so much of Pharaoh. He had all the signs, but he didn't soften his heart. And he softened it for a moment, but then he allowed it to become hardened again. And we look at as well in, I'll move on to keep telling the story of how I actually did come to the Lord, because praise God, he brought me through it. Wow, I so don't deserve his grace, but he did bring me through it. But, when we look at, there's a couple of mentions of the signs. There was Thomas, and Jesus was so faithful that, he did come to Thomas and show him the holes in his hands, because Thomas said he wouldn't believe. And Jesus said, now stop having unbelief and go on and have faith, walk in faith now. But he also did say to Thomas, better are those who just believe. Blessed are those who just believe. There's a blessing for just believing. And that whole process of needing a sign, it's a heart thing. And so I just encourage you today that if you feel like you need a sign and you're struggling to trust God, come and bring your heart towards him, because sometimes when we're asking for a sign, it can really take us on quite a difficult journey, because we still have to yield our heart. But the other places where it talks about a sign is, in Matthew 11, where it talks to woe to the what sorrow awaits you, Chorazin and Bethsaida. For if the miracles I did in you had been done in wicked Tyre and Sidon, their people would have repented of their sins long ago, clothing themselves in burlap and throwing ashes on their heads to show their remorse. I tell you, Tyre and Sidon will be better off on Judgment Day than you. And you people in Capernaum, will you be honoured in heaven? No, you will go down to the place of the dead. For if the miracles I did for you had been done in wicked Sodom, it would still be here today. I tell you, even Sodom will be better off on that Judgment Day than you. And that's because Jesus was rolling around the place doing miracles left, right and centre, yet they were so hard-hearted. They didn't believe. There was something inside of them that was just rebellious, so we've got to be so careful. And I feel like in these last days, we've got to be so careful that really, we're playing around with the spiritual world, and with a holy God. And not only is he holy, but he's trustworthy. And the one that lies to us and says that he's not trustworthy, he's the one bringing destruction. And so I hope that the next part of my story helps you to understand that, and I hope it's a blessing. And so, that part where my heart hardened, I thought I'd already been in a dark place, but I went into such a dark place, and really, just really felt so separated from God. And I couldn't even pray, couldn't even talk to God. I just felt so cut off and rejected by him, and I thought, how could he even want me? And then I was thinking, well, I'll reject you, God, I don't want you. And so I got heaps into witchcraft and just different things like that. And anyway, I got into another relationship and ended up having some children, and we moved into a place in the mountains, and there were good times for us, but we were really broken people, and I was a really broken person. We didn't know God at all, and we were dependent on drugs and different things like that, and had our own brokenness behind us, and so there was a lot of fighting, and that I didn't drive a car, so there was times when I was months without sometimes seeing people, seeing other adults, and my husband, or my partner, would come home, and sometimes he'd be gone away for work, and so I'd just be there with the kids, and I wasn't sure what he was doing, and and that really was soul destroying for me at times, because we really didn't know how to love each other at all, and certainly I didn't feel loved or cared for by him. I just felt stuck, and I eventually one night I got a phone call, and the phone call was saying that my friend had suicided, and that was just a pivotal moment for me. That was soul destroying, because in that moment it was like I knew every single part of what my mum had said to me had come to pass, and I could see that those things had happened, and in fact I knew that Jesus was real because I'd seen him, and so I knew that there was stuff not right, and so I felt so guilty, but I didn't know how to get back, into relationship with God, because I thought surely he's rejected me. I saw Jesus go up and I rejected him, so how do you get past that? And so I part of me started to soften. Interestingly, I had some Jehovah Witnesses come to the door. I'm not into Jehovah Witnesses at all, and I think when I started to share my actual story with them, they must have thought I was nuts. But that was interestingly just talking about God and talking about some of those things, my heart started to soften. But the truth was, but with all the destruction still going on in my life, the grief of what had happened to my friend, and the isolation and the destruction in my relationship, just such a deep grief and heaviness came over me, and I just wanted to die. And I remember toying with this for a bit of time, and then one night my partner was away, I don't know where he was, and I remember just thinking, I'm just gonna kill myself. And so I wrote out a letter, and I made a plan to do that. I had a serious plan lined up, and as I finalised all the little bits and pieces of everything that I was going to do that night to end everything, as I went to do it, right in front of me was this this big, probably man-sized spirit of death standing right in front of me. It looked like a grim reaper, and it scared the living heck out of me. But instantly, as soon as I knew it, as soon as I saw it, the veils just dropped off my heart and off my eyes and my mind, and it was like every bit of darkness, every lie of the enemy completely just dropped off my life. It was like I could see for the first time. I could see, whilst I understood it a little bit, I just understood it completely clearly, and I could see the way that the enemy had taken my friend out. I saw the way that the enemy was lying to me, and I saw the difference between dark and light, and good and evil, God and the devil, and I could clearly see it. It was like every single lie that I'd ever heard, including right back when I was younger, around not being able to trust God and God not really being there for me. All of those thoughts completely just melted away in an instant. So I quickly got up and I rebuked that thing, because I knew how to do that, because I'd been to church when I was younger. So I said, "Get behind me, Satan, in the name of Jesus. I command you to leave in the name of Jesus. I rebuke you." So I got out of the room, because I was a little bit freaked out. But instantly I just got down on the ground and I started repenting to God, and I started crying out and just saying, "God, I'm so sorry. I repent. I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I'm so sorry for the rebellion in my heart. I'm so sorry that I've not trusted you. I'm so sorry that I've partnered with the enemy and that I've allowed him into my life. I'm so sorry for not listening to the truth. I can't remember everything, but I'm so sorry for the addictions in my life and for every area of sin in my life. And such a freedom came over me, and I just invited Jesus fresh back into my life, and the fire of God just fell on me so strongly. Instantly I was set free from the addictions of marijuana. And I know that you probably shouldn't be addicted to marijuana, but I know that there are lots of people that are, and I certainly was. And instantly the desire to smoke pot was just an instant repellent. I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to do anything, I didn't want to swear. The fear of the Lord came upon me. And it was such a good thing, because I just knew I don't want anything that is not of God. I just want everything that God's got for me. And so that was how I came to the Lord, and I'm so thankful to Him, because I just did not deserve it. I just did not deserve His love, and for Him to continue to take me through that path. And I was so repentant for what had happened to my friend. And it's taken me a very long time to not feel a guilt for that. And at the end of the day, I look back and I realize people do what they do for their reasons, and whether he would have listened, I don't know. And what happened for him in those last moments, that's between him and God. And that that's a really important thing to my heart. But also I need to be able to move on, and so I'm just so thankful to God for the freedom that He's given me. So that is my story, and I hope that it's a real encouragement to you. I hope that it's an encouragement to mums who are praying, to know that God will find a way. He'll make a way, and He will bring your children through. And I'm so excited, knowing it and praying that God has intercessional strategies and spiritual intel that He shows me about praying for my kids and praying for different situations, and He will help you, praying mums and dads, praying for the next generation as well. What a mighty God we serve, and He's so faithful. He's so faithful to just love us even when we don't deserve it. So I just pray that if you're really lost, if you've got a heart journey that you're not needing to keep walking out at the moment, I encourage you, keep walking that out with God. Bring that rebellion before Him. Bring any hardness of heart and ask Him, just like David did in Psalm 51, where David said, "Search me, O Lord, and help me. If there's any wicked thing found in me, help it to come out." And that's something we need to keep doing, is bringing our hearts new to God every day, because our hearts are so important. And that's where the enemy wants to get in, and he wants to cause a separation. That's where God said, love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and so all your strength. And so that's the most important thing. God just wants to be loved by us, because He first loved us. So I pray that you're encouraged today. God bless. See ya.